Greetings of the season once again. Happy New Year, Tigers fans. It's the final day of 2025. And this morning I'm joined by Burnsy and Catherine and potentially Fletch if his alarm eventually goes off. But who's to say what will happen? He probably thinks it's 2026 already, does Fletch. He's probably had a big night. We'll start. Morning, Catherine. How are you?
Morning, I'm good, Baz. That's got to be his New Year's resolution, isn't it? Get a new alarm clock. I thought he might have got one for Christmas.
Clearly not. Unlike the last couple of referees that we've had, who have had both new whistles and new packs of cards, there will be those that are saying, "Oh, we're not even a minute into the program, and he's already moaning about referees." So I'll leave it there. Burnsy, how are you?
And that was going to be me. Morning, everybody. I was going to say, don't start on the referees. Let's talk about joyous stuff and things like that. And if Fletch was a professional footballer, imagine the amount of fines going into the Christmas kitty that he'd have to pay for turning up late for training all the time.
So he'd be paying for the Christmas party.
But anyway, we'll move on. We've had. It would be. We're loads of response to the Middlesbrough win coming in on the 1904 club. We must remember to talk about the Sheffield Wednesday performance that preceded it as well. Questions about the transfer window, which is but hours away, and also top two. Are they in the conversation for the top two? Personally, I think they are, because you look at the table and they've just beaten the second place side. And despite all the injuries, and we'll talk about the injuries as well, I think they're in the conversation.
Absolutely. Catherine, we talked about the Wednesday game before Christmas, and we said it would be largely down to attitude and not quality, that if City turned up and had the right attitude, there's a fair chance they would have won the game. It didn't transpire like that, but then they went to Middlesbrough, and as you said to me, almost typical City after Hillsborough, and won the game. And we probably would have taken 4 points from those two games at the outset, given how many games there are around Christmas, the squad and injuries and all that sort of stuff. Perhaps not in the way it worked out in the permutation it did.
Yeah, I think what's weird is this was me and probably other City fans as well, probably felt more nervous about the Sheffield Wednesday game because of the potential banana skin and the expectation of us thinking we were going to win than we did about the Middlesbrough game, where there was probably not less pressure, but less expectation because of the game, at our place a few weeks ago. Nobody was probably expecting us to get a result there. But obviously Middlesbrough had a couple of games where they hadn't won. So I always kind of felt like there was almost not more chance, but in that, typical City fashion, as we say, I was sort of sat there thinking I wouldn't be surprised if we beat Middlesbrough, but we don't necessarily beat Sheffield Wednesday, which is obviously what ended up happening. We looked a little bit leggy at Sheffield Wednesday, I thought. We looked a little bit tired. I don't know. I've seen a few different things about whether they should have had Christmas Day off. I think it becomes... You have teams that had Christmas Day off did win. Teams that had it off didn't win. I think it swings and roundabouts. I'm not sure what massive a difference it makes. But we did look a little bit tired. And we just sort of struggled to kind of break down what was quite a resilient performance from Sheffield Wednesday. And I think I was always expecting them to come out and put in a performance like that in a Yorkshire derby. If you can't kind of get up for those games, then you're not probably going to get up for any. So I kind of always thought that was going to be a tricky one. And then with Middlesbrough, it was obviously the complete opposite, where we didn't really have much of the ball. We were always going to have to kind of sit in and defend. And obviously we did a good job of that. Nicked a goal. I think before those two games, we would have happily taken 4 points. So we would have thought they'd have come the other way around, but it doesn't really matter how they come. I think that's two very good, a good set of points from those two fixtures.
And I think, Catherine, as well, the other thing is that as inherently frustrating as Boxing Day was, they didn't lose the game. And I think you make a valid point there that, me and Burnsy said this at Hillsborough, that Wednesday we're never going to turn up and roll over. It's the first Boxing Day game at Hillsborough for 10 years. There was a massive crowd there. Yes, their squad is depleted, but they're still giving a lot of teams games. They gave Ipswich a game the week before and were, only lost 3-1, and they were in the game until quite late. So it was kind of perhaps naive from those of us that thought that we were just going to roll up at Hillsborough and win 3 or 4-0 and coast it. So what I would say is, as poorly as City played, they still fought back from 2 goals or from a goal down on 2 occasions, and they didn't lose the game. We all kind of feel like they did lose the game, but they didn't. They did get a point, and suddenly, that unbeaten run is now 5 games since Boro, and they've taken 4 points from the last 2 games. So, any game away in the Championship is difficult. Wednesday's situation makes it look like it should be an easy game, but it just was never going to be that, was it?
No, and sometimes you've just got to accept that you maybe weren't at your best and get out of there with a point, because I think in other seasons we might have succumbed and lost the game, but to come back from twice from being behind, I think shows character. As you say, as poor as they were, there was some good bits of play as well, and it was always going to be difficult to break Sheffield Wednesday down. I think they might have had some sort of half positive news around their takeover in the build up to that game. I don't know, they probably take any positive they can get around there at the minute, but I think they'd maybe had a little bit of encouragement. And I couldn't believe that stat when I heard that they hadn't had a home game on Boxing Day for 10 years. I mean, I felt cheated that we had 2 away in the successive years, but imagine going 10 years without a home game on Boxing Day. I couldn't believe that. So yeah, I think it was always going to be a tricky one, but later in the season we might look back at it as 2 points dropped, but we might actually look back at it as a point gained. And I think when you go behind twice and you get out of it with a point, I think you can, it's not always the end of the world.
And Burnsy, let's call a spade. If that shocking decision right on half time is not made, and Liam Miller scored the goal that Liam Miller scored, and they go 2-1 up on half time, probably a very different second half. So perhaps they were a tad unlucky.
Yeah, maybe. I think Wednesday deserves something out of the game. But if you talk to the sort of press corps, as I did before the game in the press room, they were expecting Wednesday to get tonked. They're saying, Burnsy, you'll turn these over easily today. And I think I expected the same looking at the record. So credit to Wednesday. And, at 36, Barry Bannon ran the game, didn't he? He was a delight to watch. I don't think he wasted a pass. But I'm going to do a bit of revisionism, because I did think, well, if they don't get anything here, it's going to be a bit embarrassing given the awful performances of Wednesday. But they did get something, and in the end, I also think that helped the motivation going into Middlesbrough. They were desperate to beat Middlesbrough because of the fact that Middlesbrough tonked them 4-1 not that long ago, but also desperate to put right the Sheffield Wednesday performance, because they knew they'd performed poorly, and that was an extra factor going into Middlesbrough. So in the end, a good point, and enhanced by that 3 points at Middlesbrough, where I thought yet again the manager got it spot on. He changed the system, he changed the personnel. He'd organised or reorganised, and then he has to reorganise again when Giles goes off, and it paid off. Credit to him and the team. There was loads of determination. The goal from JB was a lovely goal, and a really good team performance, and very uplifting going into the new year. And we'll talk about that. Benjamin Horth sends us a tweet. Sorry, I'm not doing Facebook and everything like that. I'm just doing tweets is the way to get in touch with the 1904 Club. It's just easier. Benjamin Horth says, incredible performance, resolute, determined, inspiring, and collectively united. Injuries and experienced transfers are key. No European future prospects, please. Here's one for you, Baz. You'll get a few of these today. Is Kieran Dowell one we're looking at, Baz? Loves a goal at the MKM, usually against City. We can mix and match the various names that are kicking about, the ins and outs, through the programme. Kieran Dowell, anything in it? His name popped up a week or two ago, didn't it?
Yeah, I think he's a player they like. That is a player that's been on their radar for a little while, previously actually as well. He's not getting much of a look in up in Scotland with Rangers. I actually remember covering Forest at Hull City, and Kieran Dowell scored a hat trick, and I remember interviewing him after the game, after he'd scored a really good hat trick. He came through at Everton, didn't he? And was really, really highly rated. He went on loan to Forest. He sort of lost his way a little bit since he's had, I think he spells at Norwich and what have you. But I think if he's the sort of player that if they could get him, then that would represent solid business. But they've got there's a few different avenues they're looking at. But as we've said before, they've got to get players out first. Seny Dieng, the goalkeeper from Middlesbrough, is a player they're in talks with, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Ivor Pandor is going to go. We spoke to Sergei Yakurovich a couple of weeks ago, and he said that a goalkeeper was on his agenda because he wanted to give greater competition to Pandor. Clearly, without being disrespectful to Dylan Phillips, they clearly don't feel that Dylan Phillips is pushing Pandor enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going out to try and get another goalkeeper. I mean, that's pretty obvious, I would think. So Dieng, 31, he's vastly experienced in the Championship. Not had a great time at Middlesbrough, in all honesty. But if they can get him in, and he can push Pandor, who, in fairness, has improved since that Boro game. They've kept 3 clean sheets in 5 games. They've now kept 6 for the season. And he wasn't overly worked at the Riverside, was he really? But the couple of saves he made when Bergzon came on were really important. I mean, saves you'd expect him to make, in fairness, but he's still got to make them. But yeah, I think a goalkeeper. Some people might say, well, why do we need a goalkeeper when it's 1 in, 1 out? Why are we going for a goalkeeper? But I think just there is that caveat that in a World Cup year that Pandor, there's nothing on the table, I should point out at this stage, but you could get to the back end of the window and somebody offers big money for Pandor in a World Cup year and they opt to sell him, and then they suddenly they're scratching around for a goalkeeper. At least if they've dealt with that early and something does happen, they then have the cover already in the building, and the transition is a lot more straightforward. So I think that's a sensible decision. But they do need to get players out before they can bring players in. So there will be players needing to go first.
Do they have to sell, though? Do they have to bring money in, or do they just need to get some players off the wage bill and balance the squad to do any incoming transfer business?
No, it's not a case that they're strapped for cash and they can't afford to bring players in. It's just it's the squad situation with the EFL. So it is a case of for senior. It was the same in the summer. Obviously, everybody was like, "Well, why did they sign Darko JB?" But he was classed because of his age. He was classed as a younger player. So if they're going to sign a senior player, and I think Dieng's 31, so they would need to move somebody out. As I say, it's not because they can't afford to bring. They've got to get somebody off the wage bill financially. They need to. It's to do with the squad situation with the Football League, and so that will need to happen first. That looks like it could be Cody Drame. Cody Drame is unhappy. He wants to essentially, if you look at, we spoke to Sergei Yakurovich, and he said openly to me that Cody's not happy. He wants to play more. So by definition, that means that he probably wants to leave. And so Cody could be one that goes. David Akintola is potentially one that could go if he seeks more minutes elsewhere. He's not really going to get them here, even with Balumi's injury. Brandon Williams is another one that it would be a surprise if he was here beyond the end of the month or end of January. So there's 3 players there they could legitimately move on quite quickly, and that would free up 3 spaces. I don't envisage many more than 3 new signings coming in, unless there's a surprise departure. Somebody like, we've talked about it before, if somebody comes in with crazy money for Charlie Hughes, and somebody comes in with 15, 16 million for Charlie Hughes, he may well, if people have read the interview that we did with Adjun around the finances on Christmas Eve, then you'll know that he said that they need to raise some money before July the 1st to avoid any FFP sanctions. So if Charlie Hughes was to go, they would then need to move into the market and bring somebody in to replace him. But I think as it stands, probably 2 to 3 players is about the expectation of where we're at so far.
Fring, what are you feeling about the transfer window, and what's the feeling from City fans about it?
Well, but you might have just answered my question, Bounce. But with the Drame situation, is there no way that potentially changes? Looking at, obviously we don't know how long Ryan Giles might be out for, but if he's going to be injured, I mean, Louis Coyle came off tired. Jurkovic said Louis Coyle's played a lot of football. He was sort of saying, he's fit, he had to take him off. He couldn't see out the game. Surely there's a chance, if Drame, I know he's had this kind of ongoing glute injury, whether he's over it or not. Surely there's a chance, at least in the next few weeks, that he'd probably be playing if he was fit. And I guess, maybe, obviously, if he's not happy and he wants to leave, it's a bit of a different story. And maybe the fact that if they do need to raise some money by July the 1st, they could probably get some money for him by selling him. But then it sort of counteracts it. But if then you've got to bring somebody in, we'd need to bring somebody in surely for the depth, because at fullback, behind Giles and Coyle, there's not really much depth in that area, because obviously McCarthy came on and played centre back in a back five, did really, really well. But I'm assuming, Famewo can play at left back, but you don't really want to have to play him at left back. And at right back, I mean, Regan Slater, again, he did a very good job, but you want Regan Slater in midfield. So it does feel a little bit, if you let Drame go, you'd then have to bring a full back in. And I don't know, maybe they're looking at a full back to bring in. But it does feel like it's sort of, maybe if it's because they have to raise that money by July 1st, maybe that's the reason. But I don't know. I think our problem is going to be, and we might come on to it with the Giles injury, is keeping players fit. I think that might be the difference come the end of the season, of how many injuries we rack up, how many people we can keep playing. Obviously, McBurney came off the bench, but I think you said, Baz, that he had a bit of pain, and that was maybe partly why he didn't start. It just feels like we're sort of wrapping people up a little bit, and they're kind of getting through games, but this is where we might find it a bit trickier if we can only bring a few people in, but we've got to get rid of people, where other clubs are then able to, be a bit more free and spend a bit more, or maybe try and take advantage of our situation with someone like Hughes, for example.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, I guess with Cody, there was a lot of interest in Cody in the summer, and he was close to being moved on in the early part of the summer. He stuck around. I kind of feel that once a player decides that he wants to move on, then it becomes a difficult situation to manage. Do you then say, actually, no, we need you to stay, because Giles might be out for let's nothing official on this. We're speaking to Dean Holden later this afternoon ahead of the game against Stoke City, but I suspect Dean will be fairly coy, as he usually is, about injuries. So there's nothing official on Giles, but I've got a nasty feeling that we might not see him for 3 or 4 weeks, if it is the hamstring that we fear. Then that does raise that question. Yes, Louis Coyle can play left back, but as you say, Catherine, he was taken off at Boro because he was knackered. Cathal McCarthy was unbelievable, and I was really concerned when he came on and got booked. I'm thinking that's going to be long 70, 80 minutes on the yellow card, but he was absolutely spectacular, and huge credit to him. You've got Matty Jacobs come back from Reading injured. James Furlong is back around the fold, and has obviously had major injury trouble, but is back again and in and around it. And I think they want to keep him with a view to potentially getting rid of him in January, or loaning him out in January, but that might change again now. But he hasn't played a championship game for City. He's played one game for City since he came from Brighton a couple of years ago, and that was in the FA Cup replay at Birmingham under Liam Rossini when they went out late on. So I think that was 2 years ago. At the start of next month. So they've clearly got a problem. And Famewo was very good at Boro, but he's a left-footed centre half. Liam Miller did a phenomenal job coming on, playing left wing back, which is a role he played at Preston under Ryan Lowe, but didn't particularly enjoy it. And he's coming back from an ACL and then a hamstring. And we've seen what's happened to Mo Balumi, who's now out for potentially 3 months, but he's having a second. They're trying to get a second opinion on Mo Balumi this week, because there's some suggestion that it's not as bad as they fear. So it might only be a month as opposed to 3 months. But you're right. It's going to be square pegs in round holes. You can play, can you play John Lundstram when he comes back in the centre of defence if you need to. Push Charlie Hughes wide. If Coyle's going to left back, Regan can play right back if John Lundstram plays in midfield. So, but it is square pegs in round holes, and it's one of them sad things that every time you look like you're getting towards the end of the injury issue, somebody out, you think, okay, we're getting towards the end of it. Joe Galhart goes down. We're getting towards the end of it. Balumi goes again. Oh, well, Balumi's going to be out for insert 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Gilo goes down injured, and we wait to see what the extent of that is. And it's like they just can't. You feel really sorry for the manager because they just can't catch a break. And we've played 2 games over Christmas, and we've lost 2 first-team players again. Already adding to Lundstram being out, McBurney not being fully fit, Matazo not back yet, Galhart being out. It's just a bloody nightmare, isn't it?
I was hoping it was a phantom injury.
I was impressed with Miller the other night when he came on as a wing back.
Go on, Catherine.
Well, the Giles injury, Catherine.
Yeah, I was saying to Baz earlier, I was hoping it was like a phantom injury because he's had a few this season where he's gone down or gone off and then he's actually been all right. But it reminded me of Kira Walsh at the World Cup a few years ago when everyone thought she'd done her ACL and then she came back 2 games later. And there was like a conflab between, obviously he got up and looked like he wanted to carry on. And the physios were kind of shaking their head. And Dean Holden was obviously, they'd got McCarthy ready and then all of a sudden Giles was kind of trying to say, I might be all right to, try it out. The physios were like, no. Dean Holden was almost sort of like half saying, are you sure? Are you sure we can't try it out? Are you sure we can't give it a go? McBurney had come off the bench almost as well to kind of like say, are you sure it's your hamstring? There was a lot going on. Everyone was really sort of saying like, are you sure you're going to have to go? Are you sure he has to go off? But the physios were just there, just like, no, absolutely no way. There's no way you're carrying on. And then obviously off he went eventually. But I was kind of hoping it might have been a phantom one, just because there's still been a couple of times this season he's gone down and you fear the worst, and then he's got back up and been all right. But obviously maybe his luck's run out.
Yeah, and it's, if he is going to be out for any length of time, and as I said before, it's not been confirmed yet, but my gut feeling is that it might be a month, 3 weeks to a month. It'd be a massive blow because Gilo's been amazing. He's been one of the success stories of the season. Top assist maker in the Championship, and he played a fantastic ball round the corner for Kyle, and obviously then he hurt himself. So losing him would be a massive blow. He adds the balance. I think defensively, Gilo's improved tenfold this season, and in a season that has gone so unbelievably well, better than any of us could have really expected. There's been a lot of plus points, obviously, with where they are on the table, but Ryan Giles, his comeback, his redemption, whatever you want to call it, and also the way he's developed as a player under Sergei Yakirovich has been a real pleasure to watch. And if he is out if he just, as I kind of half feeling it, he will be. If he's going to miss any amount of time, then first and foremost for him, it's a real blow because he's been in great form. And with McBurney coming back, I was really looking forward to seeing that partnership link up again. But it is what it is. It's the story of the season, and they'll have to find a solution, and that is what it's about. And what I would say, just at this point, and I know there's been a lot of stick for the medical people at the football club, which is incredibly harsh and ill-founded. There's a lot of injuries across the board. I think Sergei said to me on at Boro that he looked and there was, I think he said, was it something like 8 or 12 injuries across the league on Boxing Day alone. You look at Middlesbrough's team the other night, McGree was out, Strelic was out. They had Alfie Jones obviously didn't play. They've got a lot of injuries. There's a lot of injuries across the Championship. You see it in the Premier League. Teams are being stretched by key players. So it's not just a Hull City thing. It's nothing that the players don't want to get injured. The doctors aren't doing anything to get them injured, and they're following all the protocols when it comes to coming back. But everybody's bodies are so different. They're finely tuned, and it only takes a tweak here and there, and they're out. And they don't want to take any risks. I get it. They don't want to take any risks, and I think it's really unfair to start slamming medical professionals who are doing the best the jobs they can with the tools that they've been given.
I agree. Here's another name that actually could have been a solution to the defensive problems, but it's not going to work out. John O asked us a question on the 1904 Club. Could you please have a few words about Brandon Williams and what's gone wrong? Rumours are he's leaving in January. I naively had high hopes for this lad. Is he on his way out? Is he one of the ones going out? Because he could have played at left back, couldn't he? He'd have been ideal.
Yeah, I think he absolutely tailor-made, and what a terrifically talented footballer you'd have had coming in to replace Giles or indeed Louis Coyle on the other side. But he's obviously struggled with his fitness. They've had a fitness plan in place with him to get him up to speed. That involved playing in Conor Sellers' under 21s. He's just not reached the level. I don't think in training he's reached the level. He's had a calf injury as well over the last few weeks, which is hampered him, and it's just not worked out. I applaud the club for trying to give him a way back into it, and I think at the start of the season you thought if they can get him fit, yes, he's not played for 2 years, but you don't come through the United Academy and play in the first team a few years ago without having something about you. So he was clearly very highly rated, but he's gone through a lot. We know that off the field, and the suspended prison sentence that he got given in the summer, the community service, his driving ban and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot going on for him, and for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out. City aren't in a position with the transfer restrictions and the finances that they can afford to carry footballers. They can't afford to be, they've tried, and so is Brandon. In fairness, it's no slight against him. They've tried, but they can't afford to carry a player that is of no, without sounding too disrespectful, is of no use to them. If he can't play in the first team right now, he's of no use to them, because their need is great. Their need is now. They need players that are fit and can step in. If Giles is out, if Louis is not fully fit, and Louis will play on New Year's Day, mate, whenever that is. Is that tomorrow? Is New Year's Day tomorrow, isn't it? I've lost track. Yeah. Louis will play tomorrow because he's like that. He'll have had a bit of a rest. Yeah, he'll have had a bit of a rest yesterday. He'll go again on against Stoke. But yeah, Brandon, they need Brandon to be there now. If Ryan's going to be out, they need Brandon to step in and play on New Year's Day, and he can't. So from that point of view, they need the money, they need the squad space to go to somebody else that can come in now and make an impact.
More on the year 2025. 19 wins, 11 draws, 16 defeats, plus an embargo and an injury list that wouldn't quit. 2025 was a test of character, but the bond between the stands and the pitch is back, and that's what matters most. Let's make 2026 special. Our city, our stripes. Thank you for that. Tony Rose says, really impressed with Sergey. Joe, on the Middlesbrough result, best result of the season given the injuries. The way of playing may be a thing we have to get used to for a while, given injuries and not being able to be flexible in regard to recruitment. January will be our biggest challenge this season, retaining key players. I think it's an interesting point, because going back to Miller as the sort of left wing back, that him there, because I don't think he's a left back, and you negate his attacking talent as a left winger, and plus there are the managing his injury comeback and all that sort of thing. But if you continued with three centre halves, you could play Miller at left wing back. But again, there are all sorts of questions around injuries on that. And I'll die when I like. Okay, fair enough. A team, that's the name of the person that sent the tweet. A team that are simply exceeding expectations, and a manager who has a plan B, C, and D. And Matt Lorenzo says, fantastic result at Middlesbrough, a triumph of tactics, concentration, resolve, and grit off. but Miller and Slater filled in admirably. Will hopefully stand us in good stead for future matches when we're under the pump. And just one generally on the transfer market. And I think this is a reasonable question from Matt Bateman. What realistically, under an embargo, can City do in January? Generally, players are not available on free transfers, loans this time of year. And you are, correct me if I'm wrong, Baz, you're relying on the goodwill of other clubs, aren't you, to make these deals happen?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And we saw that in the summer with whisper it quietly, of course, and well, everywhere really about Leeds United. But they did City a massive service in allowing Joe Galhart to come here without a loan fee, when he could have gone to any number of clubs that would have paid a loan fee, and also Darko JB, who by the way I thought was excellent on the night we played at Boro and scored a wonderful goal as well. So he was allowed to come here effectively on a free transfer on a permanent deal. Yes, there was a 50% sell-on clause due to Leeds at some point in the future, but we don't need to worry about that now. So absolutely, they are relying on other clubs, and that will be the same again in January. The clubs will need to do them a favour, and so that is where I think the biggest success in January will be not who comes in, will be the players that either go or don't go, and getting players back. If they can get to the 2nd of February with Charlie Hughes still a Hull City player, with Joe Galhart back and fit and playing, which then lessens the blow of losing Mo Balumi for a period of time at least, and getting John Lundstram back, Shemi Ajayi coming back from the Africa Cup of Nations. Obviously, he's doing really well with Nigeria at the minute, and you fancy them to go very, very deep into the tournament. They're already qualified, of course, for the next round. I think keeping the majority of their squad together, and having some good luck with injuries. And let's be honest, they've had no luck with injuries pretty much from the start of the season. From the moment John Lundstram got hurt, they've lost Balumi, they've lost Miller. Obviously, McBurney's been out, Galhart's been out. So they've had no luck. They've had no luck at all season with injuries. So that would be the biggest success in January. And then if they can add one or two as well, great. If you said to me they're not going to sign, well, they might, obviously the goalkeeper thing, but if you said to me February the 2nd comes, 7 o'clock on February the 2nd comes, they've not signed anybody, but they've not lost anybody, and they've got players back, I'd be quite happy with that. I think that would be, I'd mark that as a successful window. I don't think they need, if everybody's fit, and obviously Elliot Matazo we expect back sort of early part of February. He's making really good progress now on the grass. He will be a phenomenal new signing when he comes back, caveated, of course, with the risk of him doing his hamstring like we've seen with Liam and Mo. But that, for me, Catherine, would be a massive success.
Yeah, it would. And I mean, then, when Matazo comes back, I guess we touched on it earlier, Slater's so versatile that he could fill in at right wing back or right back if there was ever an issue with Louis Coyle. But he's been so good in the centre of midfield, you kind of don't want to lose him from that area. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on. It's so hard to predict when someone like Matazo comes back, as we've seen with Miller and Balumi. You're so kind of vulnerable to doing a muscle injury when you've been out for so long. It is really difficult to know. Like he might be all right. He might, we might have him for a few games and then he might get injured. It's really kind of difficult to know for certain. But you just kind of hope the luck sort of changes a little bit and we can have a bit of a run without picking up injuries. But when the games are coming thick and fast, it is really difficult. My favourite bit with Liam Miller playing left wing back was the full-time whistle, because he'd been pretty good defensively, not really made a mistake, and then right at the end passed the ball straight to a Middlesbrough player, and I thought, oh my God, what are you doing? And then the referee blew his whistle. I thought, brilliant, I've not liked this referee for most of this game, but that was the best decision he's made all match.
I liked his performance, I must say, when he gave only 4 minutes added time at the end, and it reminded me a bit of the Leicester win under Liam Rossini a couple of seasons ago when we 1-0 up. Liam Delap had scored, and there was so much time taken out the game in the second half, and we're sort of hanging on a bit. We're 1-0 up, and then I think the referee I feel like it was John Busby, put only 3 minutes up, and all around us the Leicester fans all around us were absolutely raging, and we're like, we'll take that. And it was the same on Monday night at Boro, Monday night, when 4 minutes went up. I was thinking, we'll take that. And they actually apart from that Liam Miller moment, they dealt with injury time brilliantly. They kept the ball at the other end. McBurney was brilliant when he came on in winning free kicks and getting them out and keeping the ball. Should have had a corner, but we'll not talk about that. But yeah, they managed it really well. But yeah, you're right, Catherine. Liam did a great job when he came on. And as Burnsy touched on earlier on, whilst admittedly not ideal, he can play left wing back. He doesn't enjoy it because he said to me before, Ryan Lowe played me there at Preston and I didn't particularly enjoy it. But knowing Liam, he will do a job for the team for the short term. I think the key thing for City is to get through these 2 games, Stoke tomorrow, Watford on Sunday afternoon. Then they've got, best part of 2 weeks without a championship game. Yes, they've got the Blackburn game on telly, big game on telly that on Sunday week. But he can afford to maybe, we'd love a cup run. We'd love just to get past the 3rd round, but bigger picture, he can give Firmino more minutes, JB more minutes, and Darla more minutes, potentially James Furlong minutes as well. Destan some time and try and eke out a result and give those players a rest, because that game at Southampton after the FA Cup weekend is mammoth.
Just mentioning Liam's, this into the 1904 club from Liam O'Boyle, which I found a fascinating question because, I thought initially a bit of a daft question, and I thought, oh, maybe it's fascinating. No offence, Liam. Is there any thought about cancelling John Lundstram's loan, but securing him permanently in the summer once the embargo is lifted? Can City afford to continue to take a risk on his fitness, given their strong position right now? A defensive midfielder should be a top priority. Still can't decide whether it's a fascinating question or a daft question, Liam, but I'm glad you sent it to the 1904 club. I think they need him now. I suppose the key question is, because he's been nearly there for quite a few games now and not made the squad, Baz. Where's he at, John Lundstram?
I actually think that's a really good question. I'm not trying to earn brownie points with Liam after you've just said his question was a shambles. But I can see the merit in that. if you've got a player similar to Brandon Williams that can't affect the team and keeps getting injured, is it worth keeping him around? Taking up a loan space and a salary when you could potentially replace him with somebody that can come in. And I do get the logic of that question. What I would say is that Lundstram is viewed as a really important member of the dressing room. The hope is that if he's not back against Stoke, that he will be back on the bench against Watford. And it's another case of he should have been back. The expectation was that he would have been in the squad at Sheffield Wednesday. When he wasn't back in full training. He was training on his own again. And he had a bit of an issue, and they didn't want to take a risk with him. And I understand the fans' frustration because these players, and possibly it comes from Sergei Yakurovic's honesty. Sergei said in advance, we expect him back for Sheffield Wednesday. So then the fans expect him back for Sheffield Wednesday. Then when players, as they do, have setbacks along the way, Ollie McBurney, for example, came back into training, was expected back for Norwich. He had a setback. He had some discomfort in his calf, and he was put back a couple of weeks. That happens. I guess if you want honesty from a manager who says we expect him back by a certain point, and then that certain point comes and they're not back because they've had a setback or something's gone wrong or they want to be a bit more careful, you then, those expectations are dashed, aren't they? So I guess you could have a manager. There are managers out there that just go, got nothing to say. He's out. He'll be back when he's back. There are a lot of managers that just refuse to give anything about injuries, and you don't get anything, and they just suddenly appear on the team sheet. I would much rather the manager's honest and says we expect him back for Wednesday with the caveat that things could change. I would much rather that than be a manager that just shuts it down and says, "I'm saying nothing. He'll be back when he's back. We'll keep it under wraps, and he's back when you see him, his name on the team sheet, and nothing else."
I agree. They could definitely do him back, and I presume for his personal finances, he needs to get back and earn some appearance money, because he's going to have to chip into that 50 grand club fine for the thing he kicked off at Stoke, isn't he? That was 50 grand he got. The club got, didn't they?
Basically, the cost of Regan Slater's transfer.
I'd like to see him back. I've been impressed with him, and it's a shame he's been missing. Oliver Harsley says, I like the potential signing of Seny Dieng as further cover for Pandor, as he's a very experienced keeper, ruthless and cutthroat about letting certain players leave so we can strengthen in the areas that we want. Phil Moore says, think City's transfer priorities at the moment are fullbacks and attacking midfielders. Any names? Are we still in for McConnell at Liverpool? Baz, one for you?
I don't believe so at this stage, no. And just a bit of a shameless plug here for an interview that I've done with the owner that's coming out first thing in the morning, where he talks openly about the transfer window, about his expectations, and probably why the club won't be signing players from a Premier League club on loan, because they won't play. And he's also they're also really cautious about upsetting the team spirit. And Catherine, that team spirit, it was questioned last season at times, but this season we saw it again in spades at Boro, didn't we? The amount of blocks, the bodies were thrown in the way of shots. They were determined not to let Middlesbrough get in, and that team spirit has been a key factor in them being fourth and 2 points off the top two at the turn of the year.
Yeah, it's huge. They just it seems to be a group that really gets on and love each other, really. And I feel like last season we couldn't always see that, and maybe I'm not to say that there was disharmony, but I think because things weren't going right on the pitch, it just looked like things maybe weren't going up right off the pitch as well. But I think the manager has played a big role in it in terms of keeping everybody happy, or most people happy. And you look at the kind of bond between the players and them celebrating that result at Middlesbrough, and the more experienced players sending McCarthy over to the away fans to get his richly deserved applause from them. It just looks like a really together group, and that can take you a long way. I think there is always a team in the Championship that gets into the playoffs, and I'm not saying this is us, because I think we've played some brilliant football, but obviously if we are a bit struggling with injuries, there is always a team that sometimes gets there, partly because of the spirit that they have in the dressing room, and they might not be. We had more from Middlesbrough fans, didn't we, after the game, saying that Hull were the worst team they've played all season. We might not be the best team in the league, even though we are second top scorers. I think we might not be the best team in the league, but I think sometimes not always the best teams in every single department are the ones that succeed. I think Phil Brown's team in 2008 was not the best team in the league, but they had a lot of team spirit and grit and determination. And I think we've actually shown, I think we've seen more this season of what we can do going forward in terms of playing good football. And I think hopefully now we might see, and Burnsy kind of half touched on it earlier, we might see that other side to City that you need to take you into the top six going forward. Just to point on Semi Ajayi obviously being away with Nigeria, just because you mentioned it earlier. Obviously really happy he's doing well, but I wouldn't mind if they went out. I don't want to be mean, because obviously it was really nice when Jean-Michel Seri won it a few years ago, and it was really nice seeing him lift the trophy. But then we were without him for ages, and every time Nigeria won, I thought, and he scored in one of the games as well, didn't he? I was like, Shebby, could you not just not do that? Can he come back a bit earlier? But I mean, then obviously if they did go on to win it and he came back buoyant, it might be a really good thing. But also, I wouldn't mind if they went out a bit earlier.
Absolutely. Go on, Burnsy.
Catherine, you're being mean. You're being
You've
mean,
got the finger.
Catherine. I think that's It's just mean. Yeah, that's terrible. That's
I don't know, but we need him
that's
back,
mean.
Burnsy. We haven't got any. We're running out of
But
players.
anyway, well,
Nigeria will have another chance
we'll
in a
let you
few
off.
years.
He might not though.
I know, but
Yeah,
it's the pinnacle of his career, and I hope he gets all the way to the final and they win it. I used to live in Nigeria as a kid, so I've got a little bit of fondness for them. Denbo says that point at Wednesday.
I feel like that's something we need to explore more.
that's a separate podcast, I think, isn't it? Burnsy's life in Nigeria.
When did you live in Nigeria?
It's not a travel program. It's not. I did. Yeah. I left when the Biafran War started, when the machine gun bullets. I was only young, but it shows you how long ago it was. Anyway, moving on. Back to the football. Back to the messages to the 1904 club. Denbo says that point at Sheffield Wednesday might just keep us up, as we're the worst side anyone has lost to in Championship history. And Coxey says, Boro fans saying the worst team they've seen there this season. Yet we're joint third. Lee Walker says, really impressed with the season so far. We were written off before the season. Let's see what 2026 brings us. And Stephen Franklin says, super proud of where we are in the league right now with January coming up. If we can bring in a few new additions, I really feel we can do something amazing at the end of the season. Let's all keep believing, then we can all dare to dream again. And Angel Hayes says, I thought all the lads were incredible at Middlesbrough, but blimey, Regan Slater was immense. And Taylor Bedford, back to the worst team. What's the odds of the worst team in the league getting autos? I think I saw somebody tweeting that 100-1 the bookies have got City to win the title at the moment, or to get automatic promotion. And HB Harvey says, can we start to dream about the autos? Well, of course they can. Of course you can dream. The injury reality might be the thing that hampers them, but of course you can dream. As I came back, I'm coming back to where I was at the start of the programme. They're definitely in the conversation for me.
Can I just say on that? I keep seeing people, opposition fans, say City are the worst team, and there are times in games where you go, I can see why they would say that. But if you look at the form guide over the last 4 games, City are top. If you look at the form guide over the last 6 games, I think City are second. If you look at the form guide over the last 10 games, 12 games, and 15 games, City are in the top 4. You can probably go back the last 20 games. City are in the top 4, top 6. There's a reason they are 2 points off the automatic places after 24 games of the season. They're clearly not the worst team in the league, because they are one of the best teams in the league statistically. Only Coventry have scored more goals. Ipswich have scored the same as them now. But the second top scorers, only Coventry have won more games than Hull City this season. So, yes, defensively they've been porous, but since that Boro shambles, they've kept 3 clean sheets in 5. They've won 4 out of those 5 games. So, beating Middlesbrough along the way, beating West Brom, beating Wrexham, who could have gone above them at the time, drawing at Sheffield Wednesday away from home in a Yorkshire derby on Boxing Day. So it's all right. People keep, churning out, or fans of, or whoever, churning out this rhetoric nonsense about City, but consistently they get results and they go on runs, and they are. We bemoan their lack of consistency perhaps earlier in the season. We bemoaned it certainly last season, and we bemoaned it in the year that Liam Rosenior's team didn't get to the playoffs, the lack of consistency in winning football matches. I mean, this team doesn't draw many. It's either a win or a lose. But they tend to, if they lose, they tend to go and win 3 or 4. Then they might lose a couple. Then they'll go and win 3 or 4. I'd rather they do that. I'd rather they lose a couple than draw 3 and win 1 and then lose a couple. The way they're doing it is much more effective. They're winning a lot more games. They're getting a lot more points. Just for comparison, Burnsy and Catherine, while I'm at it, this time a year ago, at this exact point, they were 21st in the table with 22 points, having just won at Blackburn Rovers away from home. Ryan Longman scored the winning goal, the final game of the year. The year before, when they missed out on the playoffs under Liam, they were beaten at Sheffield Wednesday on New Year's. I think it was New Year's Day, and they were 6th on 39 points. So, at this point they were 6th on 39 points. They lost at Sheffield Wednesday and then fell out of the playoffs after that defeat on New Year's Day. So they're surpassing, obviously, last year. They've already equaled last year's amount of wins at pretty much the halfway point. And they are ahead of where they were under Liam's team that missed out eventually on getting in the top 6 because they drew basically every home game for 5 months. So, let fans say what they want, but the table doesn't lie. The form guide doesn't lie. And City are where they are on merit. And you can answer that question, Burnsy, and Catherine as well, about the top 2. They've got to be in the conversation because they could end tomorrow second in the table, and we're on New Year's Day.
Catherine?
Yeah, I think that they're 100% in the conversation. I think we've all got our reservations about the injuries and what we may or may not be able to do in January and what other teams may or may not be able to do. But you can't kind of predict what's going to happen in a few months' time. But as of right now, they're 100% in the conversation because it's within touching distance. I think for me, not to sound negative, I don't want to get told off by Burnsy again, but my kind of thinking was I actually thought Boro would fall away. I feel like Boro may do a Sheffield United in the sense of, the managerial change probably hasn't helped them. I always thought Ipswich would come good. I think Coventry are far away in front of others enough to stay in the top 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is Coventry and Ipswich that end up in the top 2. But we're 100% in with a shout. It's a bit like Aston Villa until last night. People were sort of saying they were in for shout of the Premier League because they were in they're within touching distance of it. So hopefully we don't kind of follow what happened to them last night. But they're definitely in with a shout. I think playoffs feels more realistic, but I think we just enjoy being in and around the conversation for both things.
Burnsy, what's your assessment?
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing for me that's going to trip them up is the relentless injuries. I mean, the good news on the injury front is we should see Gelhardt back by the end of the month, by January, and that'll be a big boost. But it's the injuries. But enjoy it. I think it's a brilliant season. It's really enjoyable to watch. I keep coming back to the manager. I'm so impressed with him, the way he changes things around, ahead of games, during games, and he's getting a tune out of them, and they've got incredible spirit. So I think they're in with a genuine chance. Yes, you'd look at. I think you'd probably look at Ipswich and the way they're coming, and they've got an expensively assembled squad, but City have just got remarkable character and spirit, and a manager who seems to have the Midas touch. So long may it continue. Just enjoy the ride. This is way ahead of any of our expectations, I think, in terms of what we were expecting this season. East Old Tiger to the 1904 club says there's definitely a team mentality. You can see how much the players are together. Going to be needed in this relentless period. Hopefully better luck on the injury front in Sergei, we trust. Richard Eglin says Sergei learns quick and stopped the Boro midfield the other night. Just what was needed, made me feel better. And Lee Dolman says, I had faith in Sergei from the off and backed City to finish in the top half. Dare to dream. Anything is possible this year. Southampton and Leicester are inconsistent. Ipswich will find another gear and be top 2. So unless Coventry implode, we may have to settle for the playoffs. What a shame that would be, just having to settle for the playoffs, Lee. Thank you very much for your messages. I think I've got through most of them. There's still one or two which I'll flip to another screen and bring you those as well.
Just a quick one on Stoke City. They're in terrible form. They've won once, and that was against Swansea at home since we won there at the end of November. Mark Robbins, I listened to his interview after the defeat the other day. They were against Sheffield United. the fans were booing his substitutions and he was criticising the fans. Now, over the last few years, Stoke and City have traded home wins and home defeats. So whoever's won the away game has then lost the home game. So let's hope that doesn't happen tomorrow. I think that given what happened at the Bet365 at the end of November, which Burnsy's touched on already, City were fined 50 grand for, and Stoke 25 grand. And if you've not read the written reasons, it's really quite comical. Go and we've got the story on our website. Go and read the written reasons for it. Craig Pawson is a Premier League referee. He's been given the assignment of that game, but they are in awful form. I think they're down in 10th or 12th. So they've won one game at home since that defeat to City when they were second in the table, of course, at the end of November. Catherine, just quickly on that game against Stoke, and obviously then Watford are in great form, moved sixth on Monday night with a last minute winner at Norwich. That Watford game looks on paper at the minute the tougher of the two, but obviously it's the Championship, so you never really know.
Yeah, I think Stoke had a player sent off against Sheffield United as well. I think Ben Shearman. I think he's a defender, so that leaves them a bit short as well. It's never a good sign when a manager is criticising the fans and fans booing the substitutions. It's usually the start of the end. And I mean, I can't see them getting rid of Mark Robbins, but it's never a good situation to be in. So you almost kind of feel like it would be an easier away game to go to a little bit because it would feel maybe a bit more toxic, but you hope that Stoke don't just come and frustrate us, because I think that might be what they try and do. And like you say, I think the Watford game looks tougher, but Watford will probably come and maybe try and play a bit more football than Stoke might do. So actually, that might suit us better. It's really difficult to know, and obviously, a lot will depend on who we have fit as well. But it feels like a good time to play Stoke. Obviously, we've said that before about teams, and it's not kind of worked out how we might expect. But it doesn't feel like particularly the fans and the manager are aligned at the minute, which isn't a great place for them to be.
Just on Stoke, Burnsy.
I agree. They've
Go on. Are you still there?
Oh, I was just going to say Stoke have lost the last 4 away, so they're not in good form at all. Carl Wilkes says, very exciting times. I think this team, no matter who plays, are capable of crashing the top 2 this season. Been incredible so far. And Sergei Yakirovich has done an amazing job. Wow. Paul Hood says, agree with Baz's comment that successful sides in this league are ones who can grind out a 1-0 win. We weren't doing this at the start of the season, and shows that Sergei is bringing a more resolute approach to his tactics. That's an interesting. As everyone on the pitch at Middlesbrough was colossal for the Tigers. But what a display from young Cahal McCarthy, thrown at the deep end, but produced some big defensive moments and came of age. A big talent. And if I've missed your message, I can only apologise. There was lots coming into the 1904 club.
Yeah, just quickly on Stoke, it was Ben Pearson that got sent off, so he's out. Aaron
I got his name
Cresswell's
wrong.
out.
I knew it's been something like that. I think I'm somebody else.
Eric Bokat's out, Lewis Baker's out, and Junior Tashmady was away with at the Africa Cup of Nations, so they've got some problems. So that's Stoke. Big crowd expected. They're bringing. They've only got a few tickets left, and I think there should be a big home crowd for. They deserve it. Just a quick mention as well. I know they're reducing tickets for the Swansea game in a few weeks' time. So. Dirt cheap tickets for that Swansea game. We're going to finish. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but we're going to finish with a very quick recap of 2025, because we are at the end of it. And as Burnsy alluded to earlier on, it's been another wild season. If you think, as we mentioned, this time a year ago, City were 21st in the Championship. We're in the thick of a relegation battle. Ruben Sayers had just come in as manager. You then go through a pretty tumultuous end to the season. Magic win at Sheffield United, magic win at Sheffield Wednesday, really turgid defeats away at Cardiff, at home to Derby, of course. That I shan't forget that one at home to Luton with the own goal. You then go to Pompey on the final day, needing to stay up, and they did. The manager then goes. A new manager comes in. You think you're going to sign Louis Barry for $3.5 million, and bang, you then get hit with a transfer embargo, transfer fee restrictions. Can't pay loan fees, can't buy anybody, and then you end the year 2 points off the top two. Catherine, how the hell do you sum that up? And if you can try and sum it up quickly, and also give us your highlight of the year, that would be tremendous.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty well, Baz. To be fair, it's just a wild roller coaster of emotions and stress and joy and relief. I think that would probably how I would sum it up. My favourite moment it's tough because David Akintola's had two brilliant ones in the last two games, getting booked without coming onto the pitch and his shot that went out for a throw-in. There was two. They will go down in history, and that will be his legacy if he does leave in January. The getting booked reminded me of Dean Windass at Stoke of all those years ago. But I think the best moment has to be celebrated and staying up at Portsmouth away. It was just such relief, and I think it was a brilliant day. The sun was shining, and it felt like thank God we've done that. That was definitely the best moment of the year, I would say.
I thought you were going to say when you referenced Portsmouth, I thought you were going to say the night before when we went out for dinner, but obviously
and you had money off as well. Yeah, that was great. That was almost as good as paying up.
Brilliant that was. And Burnsy, go on.
I was going to say I didn't know McDonald's did money off vouchers, Baz. Well done.
Don't talk to me about McDonald's.
Anyway, I was just no
McDonald's. I can't stand going to McDonald's, right? But I was so hungry after the game at Boro. I thought I'm going to treat myself. It was like midnight. I'm going to treat myself to a Grinch meal. I really wanted a pair of Grinch socks, so I tootled over to McDonald's just by the ground. Sat in the car. The app took 5 minutes, 10 minutes to re-update. Then it wouldn't log me in. By the time I've logged into the app, nothing's available. I'm thinking, oh, bloody hell. Go into the McDonald's, which was still open. It took me ages to find a human to speak to. Finally spoke to a human. Said, look, everything's unavailable. Yeah, we've sold out of everything. We've sold out of all the burgers. Are you actually serious? So McDonald's is dead to me. Anyway, Burnsy, sorry I interjected, but I thought that was a Partridge-style anecdote that was needed.
It was. Thank you for sharing, Baz.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been amazing. There have been some lows. The worry about the club itself when the transfer embargo comes in and things like that. You think, oh, what's going on here? But and big highlight, Charlie Hughes' header at Sheffield Wednesday, I thought was absolutely magnificent. That was a throwback to another age, that header. But I think the big thing for me, it feels like a football club where everybody's connected, really. Everybody's together. It's enjoyable to watch. The managers are good, the players are good, the fans are invested in it. And as we head to 2026, City are heading into 2026 on a bit of a rocket. It's good to see. Feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd go with obviously Portsmouth, what it meant for the football club, for the fans, for the people that may well have lost their jobs behind the scenes had the club have gone down. So I think that was obviously the biggest moment of the season in that sense. But I think, Charlie Hughes' header at Hillsborough was winning 3-0 at Bramall Lane was spectacular. But I think that Charlie Hughes header at Hillsborough was just the single moment of the year. But there have been a lot of them, let's be fair, this season because it's been such a good season. So, right, that's it for this year on the 1904 Club. We all appreciate your comments. Obviously, the podcast is nothing without the people that listen and the fans that take the time to watch, to listen, to get in touch, good for bad. We really appreciate it. And that's another year done for Hull City, another roller coaster, but we probably wouldn't have it any other way, would we really? So yeah, thank you to everybody that's contributed, to Burnsy, to Catherine, Fletch when he can get out of bed, Prutz, of course, and all the guests that we've had on over the course of the last 12 months. We will have plenty more coming in the new year, and hopefully a live show as well early in the new year. So stay tuned for that. And who knows what will happen in 2026. But first of all, Stoke at home on New Year's Day, followed by Watford to kick off the new year. Catherine, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and up the Tigers.
Absolutely, bloody exactly. And Burnsy, Happy New Year to you, old boy.
And Happy New Year to you, Baz, and Happy New Year to everybody that listens and watches the 1904 Club, and Happy New Year to the Tiger Nation.
And we will see you in the new year, hopefully after 2 victorious home games to kick it off with. Happy New Year, everybody. Have a good night. Whatever you do, keep safe, and we will see you on the other side. Thanks for watching.